Hi and welcome back. Today I'm going to be using the wet in wet technique to try and paint a sunrise. I want a nice sort of light pale pastel colours that you get, the beautiful pinks that you often see in sunrises across the south of England. I'm using the back of an old painting and it's on Milford paper, quarter imperial size, cold pressed, and it's taped to my board, which is at an angle of about 45 to 60 degrees, so the wet paint will diffuse really nicely. I'm using my large Chinese haki brush to wet the page all over, mostly the sky. I'm going to leave a few dry patches across the beach. Just making sure that the page is thoroughly wet, and then I'm going to go across with some raw sienna. Just going to streak that across the sky to sort of begin the sunset effect if I can. You can see that the board is at an angle as the paint is running down the page, and you can also see how wet the page was to start with. I used lots of water on my haki brush. Now this is Rose Madder. Winsor & Newton Cotman Rose Madder Students Colours. It's a lovely colour. Look at that, how it's just diffusing really prettily on the page along with the raw sienna. And Cotman raw sienna is a lot lighter than other raw siennas. It's much paler. You get I think, a very pretty glow. It's not quite so brown. Now this colour is Daler Rowney Cobalt Turquoise red shade, and that's an artist quality paint. I've got a small tube of it and it's a beautiful colour. Now I'm just putting that between those other two colours. You can see everything beginning to run down. Just added a little bit more water and things are running even more. I'm just going to soften off across the bottom. Now you might see that for a sea I've left a bit of a hill there. What I'm trying to do is leave some white patches because I'm hoping that I can create some wave crests and possibly a headland by leaving patches of unpainted paper that sort of run horizontally across the middle of the page. Now I've just tipped it and tilted it to stop it running down all the way down the page, so that I now get some beautiful directional marks with all the lovely paint diffusing together to give me some lovely shades and different hues of colour. I've laid my board flat. Sorry that the light is shining on it up in the top left corner, but no worries. Now I'm creating the sea, and I want similar colours in the sea. I'm painting this flat so that it stays flat and so that my sky doesn't run anymore. So I'm just going to pull across the paint try and sort of roughly imitate what's happening colour-wise above in the sky, trying to keep my white patches too. Now I think that will do, and it's time now just to leave it to dry. This is what it looks like without the light reflecting on the top. Right, I'll see you again in a bit once it's dry. Right, everything's nice and dry now. It's dried a bit paler and really beautifully gently diffused. In real life it's a little bit darker than it shows now, but I'm painting in my window again and the light's coming in. Now I've decided to mix up some of the cobalt turquoise red shade and the rose madder into a sort of purple colour, just to put in a distant headland and to sort of cover up the top of this white patch on the right, so that what I'm left with hopefully will be a row of wave crests with the white paper that's left. But just across the top I just want this very thin headland that looks like it's going off into the distance and getting narrower as it goes off. Might tweak that a bit later. I'll see how it dries. Maybe just take the headland off even finer at the end with just a few sort of rocky bits coming off, so it looks like sort of a Cornish headland. Now I'm just going to start to establish a bit of a beach across this corner here at the bottom, and using my medium harky brush I'm just going to sweep some of the yellow ochre across the corner, and then a much paler mixture across where I want the waterline to be, so it looks like a little bit of the sand reflecting in that. I'm going to put some of the other colours into it as well and see how it looks, but already now I'm painting it, I don't think this is going to work. I was trying just to use the same colours as I'd used in the sky for the headland, but I don't think it's going to give me enough of a beach. I think I'm going to have to go in with some different colours a bit later, but this will do as a basis for my beach and my waterline to start with, a sort of an underpainting. I'll go in with some darker colours later. I don't want to go up too far with my waterline, but I think that's about far enough now. I'm taking the corner of a plastic store card. I'm just going to run the corner through the wet paint and just move it around a little bit and create some sort of directional lines, just something slightly stronger. It's not really showing up in this colour, so yet again I think I definitely need some darker colour there, but I'll wait for that to dry first. Now this is my 3/4 inch synthetic flat brush. It's a Cotman flat brush. It's clean, it's damp. I'm going to put a ruler across where I want my horizon line to be, and I'm going to, with a clean damp brush, just run it across the ruler carefully. Run it across there a couple of times. Then I'm going to carefully remove the ruler, and then using a clean tissue I'm going to run that across the line and lift out a horizon line. Milford paper is pretty good for lifting actually, so that's come out quite nicely. Now I'm going to carry on with the same clean damp flat brush, and I'm going to lift out a few more lines, less definite than the horizon line, but just going to pull them across in the distance and coming a little bit closer, just to begin to build up the effect of distant waves oriented horizontally, so that I can begin to establish the look of the sea a bit more and the beach. I'm now going to put a little bit of wave shadow under these wave crests here where the waves are breaking. I'm using a very small calligraphy brush and excuse me, the same colour that I used for the headland, which is this nice dark purple made from rose madder and the cobalt turquoise red shade. I'm just dotting it around underneath the wave crest to try and put some shadow under the waves, and then I'm going to soften here and there with the squirrel mop and use the squirrel mop just to drag the paint across so I don't get too many hard edges there. This might need some adjustment. If you're painting along with this, you may find that at the end of the painting it might be nice to add some white gouache just to really pull out the wave crests and to add some spray, and I might do that at the end. I'll see how it looks once I've finished. But at the moment I'm just going to try and rely on the unpainted paper and make the lights really stand out lighter by putting darks underneath them. Going to use the flat brush as well, just to drag a sort of a line out from that wave, so it looks like the wave there is just building up and sort of ready to start turning. and breaking, and then just horizontal sweeps of the flat brush just to blend some more colour in across there, just very lightly, hardly any paint, more or less just moving around with what's left on the brush. Right, I'm back to my small calligraphy brush, which is lovely and versatile, and just going to go do the same underneath this wave crest. If when you were painting your wash, if you didn't manage to leave any white paper, it doesn't matter, you can always paint the wave crests in with white gouache and then go under those areas carefully with a little bit of shadow, but you have to be careful because white gouache will lift if you get it wet again. In with a flat brush again, just moving between those three brushes, the flat brush, the calligraphy brush and the small squirrel mop, just to use each brush for what it's best at. The calligraphy brush is best for detail, the flat brush is good for lines, horizontal lines, and the squirrel mop is great for softening. I think that's starting to look a lot more like waves now. But I'm going to think about doing something quite drastic to the beach in a minute. I think I'm going to use sepia and darken the beach up quite considerably. Excuse me, although it will dry lighter. So I'm just using the flat brush here just to sweep in sort of quite random strokes of sepia. I'm using the edges and the flat, just pulling across some dry brush, some nice and thick, just to try and establish a slightly darker beach. This will lighten up a little bit, although I'll get it even darker soon with some Payne's grey in there too. But I just need to establish this a little bit more. This is going to look very, very drastic, but once I get some of the sky colours in, once the beach is dry, it should come together a little bit more. That's what I'm thinking anyway. We'll see what happens. Fingers crossed it'll be all right. If not, it'll be a learning experience. Now here comes a bit more Payne's grey, just to darken up that bottom corner a little bit, just to add some nice shadows to emphasise the light that's coming in from the sunset or the sunrise. Now the beach is a bit darker, I think my distant headland needs to have some of that sort of sepia brown tone in it. So I'm just going to play around with that and get that a little bit right. And I do think that a bit later I may have to add some of this darker sort of brown sepia tone to the underneath the wave crests, just to add some, or not add, just to maintain some colour harmony across the whole painting. Now while the beach is wet, I'm just going to splatter in a nice mixture of cobalt blue, turquoise and sepia and a bit of Payne's grey, and that's just going to, we'll see some of it where the paper's dry, and it will diffuse and add a nice sort of dark patchy texture to the wet area. Now I think that's just about done, but I think I'm just going to take and run the corner of a plastic card through that nice thick dark paint just to lighten it up a little bit in some areas, and it will give us sort of rock and stone texture. But hopefully once it's completely dry, my intention is to go in with some pink, blue and yellow paint here and there to look like the sunset reflecting on the damp pebbles. So I'm going to leave it to dry completely and then come back and finish it off. Right, the beach area is completely dry now, so now I'm going to start trying to balance things up a little bit using that slightly darker mixture that I made with the cobalt, turquoise, red shade, Payne's Grey and a bit of the rose madder in it, so it's a brown but sort of on the purple side, so it kind of then goes, and it's still in harmony with the rest of the picture. Now I'm using the small calligraphy brush just to dot it around where I've already got the shadows underneath the waves, and then going to use the small squirrel mop to soften back in places, and I'm going to repeat this process across underneath all the waves until I feel that they balance more with the colour that I put into the headland and the beach. I think it adds to the sort of shadow effect on the land whilst highlighting the sky. Trying to keep my lines as horizontal and as fine as I can across here. The last thing I want is a really thick line, although I could wipe it off if that happened, if I was quick enough while the paint's wet. That's another reason Milford cotton paper, it's very forgiving, you can work on it for quite a while. Now I'm just going to come in with the flat brush, more of the horizontal strokes, using just the tips of the flat brush, very gently with pale paint, just moving paint around, just adding a little bit more of the look of little distant wavelets running into the shore at low tide. I often say when I get to this stage of the painting, it's hard to describe what I'm doing, because what I'm doing is trying to get the thing to balance, trying to get it to look right. And that's the rose madder across the foreground, so it looks like the sunset is reflecting in the wet sand and pebbles and puddles on the beach. Just gentle tweaking, just pulling it together really at the moment. I think I need to introduce a little bit more of the blue into the sand near the foreground, just so that some of the blue of the sky is reflecting too. Softening things back a bit as I go. Now I'm just going to use my fine number 1 rigger to add a few small birds with my dark headland colour, and then I'll add a few more just with sort of a more purpley rose madder colour to look like they're reflecting the colours of the sunlight. Not many, I just want a few birds just to add some signs of life to the painting. The rose madder one's just there, a little bit paler. And that's it, pretty much finished, I think. I mean, you could do a lot more to it, but I'm going to leave it nice and loose like that because I think I'm in danger of overworking it. I like the clean transparency of the washes, and I really like the white paper left unpainted for the wave crests. I'm pulling the tape off carefully, making sure it doesn't tear into the painting, so I'm pulling it away. And here it is. Well, I hope you like that, and please press like and subscribe if you haven't already, because it really helps my reach. And thanks so much to my patrons who support this channel. And if you want to take a look at my Patreon channel, then please just follow the link below. Let's just take a closer look at the finished painting, bearing in mind things are slightly darker and richer than shown here because of the light that's coming in through my windows. But I do like the effects. If remember, if you can't keep all the white or lift out white wave crests on your paper, because some paper's not very good for that, just remember you can use white gouache at the end if you want to. Thanks so much, and I'll see you again soon. Take care, stay safe, bye.